Good morning.
G'day Sam, how you doing?
Very well, how are you?
Doing very well, thanks mate. Welcome to our first podcast.
Welcome to our first
It's
podcast.
pretty exciting, isn't it?
It is very exciting. I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm sure we're going to figure it out as
Mate,
we go.
I'm sure we will we'll learn the ropes as we go along. So by way of introduction, my name is Jackson Milan. I'm also known as the Wealth Mentor, co-founder and CEO of Aureus Financial. I've been involved in the wealth industry for about 10 years. And I guess how I got into the wealth industry was that I was really frustrated with the path that my parents followed when it comes to their wealth journey. They were very misguided in terms of what was required for them to achieve their goals, and kind of stumbled through life financially and really struggled along the way. So I was inspired to try and break the cycle. So that's led me to really try and revolutionise this industry and do something different.
Yeah, excellent. My name is Sam Panetta. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Aureus Financial. I began my investment journey when I was 18 years old. I essentially didn't pass year 10 at school. Went and got a trade. I worked really hard, saved some cash, bought my first ever property, and essentially snowballed from there and continued to create wealth. And from a young age, I feel that I understood money a lot better than most, just naturally, and got to me to the point where I am today, where I've joined up with Jackson and we're trying to change it not only for ourselves but for everyone else. I've seen a lot of hardworking people who essentially never really had any success with money, and it's not because they didn't work hard or they weren't good people, they just didn't understand how it functioned. And without that basic understanding, it doesn't matter how hard you work, you're not going to get ahead. So we aim to change that. We aim to improve financial literacy, educate people about how money actually functions, and help them get ahead.
So Sam, I guess, what do you think is getting in the way for most people when it comes to understanding money? As you mentioned that you had a better understanding of most. What do you think the difference was between you and most other people?
Mate, I think I just got lucky. Even as a child, I used to go to the beach with my grandfather, and I used to pick up the pretty shells. He had a barber shop. I used to sit there with a stand. I used to sell some for 50 cents, some for $1, and some for $2. I used to finish up the day, make 10 or 20 bucks, and go home as a 4-year-old child. So I don't know why. I just had a natural affinity for it. But I think most people where they've struggled is they've never been taught. They've never been taught, Jackson. So everything else you're taught. You're taught maths at school. You're taught English. You're taught how to read. You're taught how to write. You're not taught how to do money. So there's a big gap there, and most people then follow their friends or their family and their money habits. But other people have pretty poor money habits, so it's just a continuous cycle. And unless someone breaks it and says, no, this is how money actually functions, they're just going to keep repeating the same, basic mistakes.
Yeah, I agree. It's funny that when I was a kid, actually, one of my fondest memories, probably not for my mum though, was I would have been about 4 or 5, and my mum was dating this guy who had 2 young daughters. And I come up with an idea. I was always a hustler, always doing something, doing something. The thing for me was always hustling to have money for me to spend.
Yeah.
And I always picked that up from my old man. And I think I would have been about 4 or 5. And I packed up all of my toys in a little cart, and then myself and one of the girls, for my mum's partner, hit the streets and started door knocking, trying to sell my toys door to door. And,
so good.
I recall that we picked up a bit of money, but I don't know how long we were gone for. And I know when we were leaving, the other girl basically said, "I'm not coming. Like, we shouldn't do that." And I don't know if it was a couple of hours later or whatever, but all I remember is that we just finished knocking on a door, closing a sale. And then my mum rocked up in a police car crying. And all I know is just coming basically out of the front yard of this house, and my mum's just losing her mind.
So good.
And
so good.
it was. But I think the thing was, even from that young age, I knew I had to make money, but there was no real means to an end. It was I was making money to be able to derive that kind of instant gratification from my efforts. There was no behaviours of saving or putting money away. And it's interesting that even that young, you were already being conditioned with those values to be consumers.
Yeah, to earn the money just so you can spend it on something else, so you have to go back
Exactly right.
out and earn it again. Yeah, correct.
Yeah, so look, it's interesting, mate. I think, I guess, where do you think our parents got it from, and how long do you think this has been the case? Like, where does this come from?
Well, the way society, well, the function that money's had in society has really changed over the last 3 generations, right? So you go back to our grandparents, they were immigrants, and they really, well, back in the old country, they were living on the land. They literally earned enough from the land so they could eat, so they could survive, and then go back to the land, earn some more, and eat to survive. So this idea of capitalism and the way money functions today, it didn't exist a couple generations ago. And that was a thing, stay out of debt and you live a minimalistic lifestyle, and only you don't want too much money. Money's evil, greed is evil, and all the rest of it. But I think what worked 3 or 4 generations ago very well doesn't function today. The rules have changed, society's changed, and I think that our parents would have our parents' generation would have essentially just picked it up from their parents' generation, which worked really well for. Most of them, they have a home, most of them are, fairly comfortable, but the same rules don't apply today. You can't save your cash to buy a house in Sydney. You're going to be saving for the next 300 years. Do you know what I mean? So you need to adapt and change. And I think money's a little bit more complex, mate. I think all the rules are a little bit more complex. And I think even the actual transactional side of money is different. You need to think before someone would get paid, they'd go to work for a week, they were a concreter, they made $500, they came home, they gave $200 to their wife, they gave $100 to the mortgage, and then they had $200. And then when that ran out, it ran out. So it was very easy to budget. Today, no one sees cash. Cash isn't real. It doesn't exist. Everyone uses cards and their online banking and tap and go and things like that. So people don't have that physical connection with money anymore. So they don't know, they've got $1,000 or $2,000 and they spend $1.50 here, $10 here, $100 there. They don't know.
It just disappears, right?
Disappears. It goes.
It's an interesting point, mate, and it kind of goes back that through these generations, the way that people have functioned in society has changed, right? Like, go back to the industrial age, like the early 1900s, right? Entrepreneurship didn't exist then. Like, think about it. If you were a factory worker, what was the barrier to entry for you to become an entrepreneur? You had to have a lot of money to go open a factory and employ workers and hustle to make whatever it was that factory produced in order to make money.
Correct.
Like you look back at stories, let's say, like Henry Ford, right? Of how he started the Ford company, and look at the beast that it is today. But as a company, it's suffered because it's this industrialized, huge machine. But then you fast forward and you get to a point today where the barrier to entry to become an entrepreneur is so low. Like, all you have to do is have a computer. Like, you hear, it was you who was telling me the other day about the Winklevoss twins? The ones that had the run-in with Mark Zuckerberg with Facebook.
Yeah.
So they got stitched up about the whole Facebook thing, right? But look at them now. They've been able to continue to hustle, recover from that situation where really I think most people would have thought that that's the lost opportunity of a lifetime. And then now they're one of the first Bitcoin billionaires. So it just goes to show that if the same thing occurred, let's say Henry Ford had 2 business partners that he stitched up back when he started the Ford company. If they would have got stitched up back then, they would have lost everything, because they would have had so much money invested to try and get the company off the ground that they probably would have never recovered. They would have gone broke.
Yeah, correct.
So it's interesting how things shift and change. And I think on your point, this whole idea of capitalism, that we have this I guess, desire to be successful. What is success?
Well, that's a tough question, mate. That's a tough question. I think if you asked 100 people what success is, I think you'd get 100 different answers.
I think this is the point, right? That in my experience, when I've been working with my clients, a lot of the things that they say that are important to them all come down to the same basic concepts. There's a want or desire for stability. There's a want and desire for certainty. and there's a want and desire for peace of mind.
Mm.
I think people feel like they need to work to achieve, I guess, that level of peace of mind in their life, and because there's so much uncertainty in life. Are you going to have a job next week? Are you going to get made redundant? Is your business going to be successful? Are your staff going to leave? All of these factors in life are constantly, I guess, hanging over our heads with this cloud of uncertainty. It's one of those things. People pay a big price for certainty. Warren Buffett said that. So I guess success is hard to define at a micro level. It can be very subjective, but I think it all comes down to the same things.
Yeah, and I think that hasn't changed for generations. I think as far back as you go, people they've wanted security, and they've wanted certainty, and they've wanted safety, and the meanings of those words have changed over the past few hundred years. Go back however many thousand, and certainty was not being attacked by a saber-toothed tiger. Go back probably 500 years, and certainty wasn't being attacked by your neighbour.
Sure.
In war, and certainty today, I guess it's knowing that you've got
that your debit card works at the checkout.
That your pay pass is going to work. Your PayPal. So I think the meaning of it's changed, but what people are after,
sure,
the emotional aspects of it hasn't changed.
Sure. So let's kind of open up a can of worms here. What do you think certainty is going to look like for the next generation?
I think it's really hard to tell, but if I was going to have a punt, I'd probably say it's probably more of the same. It's probably more of the same. I think the biggest change is going to be the growth in artificial intelligence and the way that automation and robotics is essentially making repetitive work redundant. And I think that has slowly affected people. You've seen the demise of manufacturing in Australia. It's because for what you need to pay a human and what a robot can do it for, robots can do it faster, more efficiently, for a cheaper price. And I think that's going to pervade more and more industries as time goes on. So people are going to need to educate themselves and skill themselves in a way that they can move around that. So they've got certainty that their skills are going to last for the next, if they're 20 years old, that those skills are going to last them out until they're 60 or 70, because people are going to live for a very long time as generations go on.
Sure.
And that's a wonderful thing, but you need security in your life. If you're going to live to 100, you don't want to be moving house every 12 months because you're still renting and you never ended up owning your own home. So it's going to throw up its own challenges.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was reading something a while back, and it was talking about, I guess, industry in Australia, right? The Mars company, I think they've got a factory in like Albury-Wodonga, which is like in between Melbourne and Sydney, right?
Yeah.
And because it's kind of a sleepy kind of country, rural town, the average tenure of the worker there's been like 20 years. And I was reading something that the production line workers were getting paid like 150 grand. Just because they'd been hanging around for so long, and every single year that the company had the union had negotiated to increase their wages. And you've got to think, like, from a commercial standpoint, how can a business afford to run with that cost of labour? You've got to look at it from both sides of the fence, right?
Correct.
And the risk is that I guess there's a lot of uncertainty for those people that they're on a really good wicket and it's not going to be sustainable. Like I've spoken to other clients of mine who are in similar positions of, let's say around the NBN. I had a client that was manufacturing the fibre cable, and he knew that he was onto a really good thing until this whole NBN thing lines up.
Yeah.
But then you think about, okay, well, if the man, the owner of these big businesses, the managers of these big businesses, realise that they're just hemorrhaging cash from people, then they're ultimately thinking about the next thing of how they can make these people redundant. It's like what happened to the US manufacturing industry. US manufacturing went all the way to China, and then they actually were able to bring it back on shore with government grants and things like that to invest in robotics and automations, but their costs for manufacturing per unit is actually cheaper than what it costs for Chinese labour.
Yeah, well, it went from American labour, which was expensive, to Chinese labour, which was cheaper at the time.
Yeah.
back to American robotics, which is cheaper than Chinese labour. So there was a wave of Americans that would have essentially lost their jobs and had to find a new way, to a wave of Chinese that essentially helped them get to where they are today. This manufacturing boom that they had over the past 30 or 40 years, they've created a lot of wealth in China. And then that's sort of changed a little bit now because they're manufacturing other things, and America's taken a lot of it back, but it's robots doing the work.
Yeah, but I think additionally it's created a lot of opportunity for specialists. And I think that with this kind of increase in AI and automation and I guess these machines that are going to make kind of the sedentary or low value, low skill roles redundant, it's going to open up a lot of opportunity for specialists. Like, who's going to go and maintain the machines? What happens when they break down? And like, for example, this is a story that I heard a long time ago, and it was like very foreign to me at the time. I used to have a friend who was a machinist, and they started doing laser machining, where basically they had this crazy laser that cuts kind of plastics and could even cut steel. And the machines were all made in Korea. And any time the laser needed to be configured, they had to fly out somebody from South Korea
to have a look
to come and look at it.
Yeah.
And it's just crazy to think that how much they would have to spend to get that one specialist, the one guy that knew everything there was about lasers, to fly out from Korea to come look at this machine. And I think that it's going to get to a point where this is the age of specialisation. I think the days of the generalist are gone, or they're on their like last legs.
Yes.
That people want to work with a specialist. They want somebody who's the kind of the master of their craft. They don't want a jack of all trades.
Yeah, well, it's you need to think, even look at it on a household level, right? So you flick back a couple of generations, and then the man of the house was a handyman, and he'd change the oil in the car, and he'd fix the plumbing, and he'd mow lawns and all that. Drive anywhere today in Sydney, and there's mobile mechanics everywhere. There's people that come and clean everyone's houses. There's guys that are mowing everyone's lawns. Like there's whole new industries that have sprouted up on the back of people not being generalists anymore.
Well, I think that flows into another important point, mate, that there's only two tradable commodities in the world, right? There's time and there's money. And people are making a lot of money. And we've seen, particularly in Australia, that since even from the global financial crisis, and we endured the global financial crisis pretty much unscathed, that we've flourished. Look at the property prices. Average household incomes have increased. And what people have lost in the process is their time. The thing that I hear the most from people that I speak to is stressed and tired. And those are, I guess, lag indicators of really not having a whole lot of time, you know? Like I think this year has been most noticeable of people working through the holiday period. Do you remember back in the day, like it was sacrilegious to work through the holiday period? You'd close the office, you'd have 2 weeks off with your family, you'd go down the coast camping or whatever. You wouldn't think about working. No way. If you said to anyone that you're working through the Christmas and New Year period, you'd probably get shot on the spot. But this year, more so than ever, I've seen more people that are just working through. Why do you think that is, mate?
Man, I think everyone's just trying to get ahead. You know, that's one of the reasons Australia has done so well is because Australians work so hard, right? So Australians have worked hard for generations. You saw, years ago, the Italians, the Greeks, the Yugos, the Chinese started coming over to Australia, and then ever since then there's been heaps of immigration, right? So all these immigrants that come in, they're working hard, and then the people that are already here are working hard, and that's one of the reasons that Australia as a country has done so well for such long periods of time, because we're not having afternoon naps from 1 to 4.
Siestas,
no siestas in Australia, and essentially everyone's working really hard, but you do really well out of it, and that's what it helps produce. The higher household incomes and the higher property prices and things like that. But then that's time and energy has to be invested in that. And that's where you see people sort of sacrificing other lifestyle commitments to keep pushing forward with their career.
But something's got to give, mate. I've always been a big believer in working smarter, not harder, and I think this is an unfortunate trait that we've inherited from the last generation, the baby boomers particularly, that our parents felt that they had to work hard for their money, really hard. Like I remember how hard my old man used to work. Like my old man worked in the oil and gas industry as a rigger and a dogman, and he was running around like a donkey until basically he fell off the perch. And he was working 16-hour shifts and going to do shutdowns where it was just hard yakka in dangerous environments. And I think that if he would have been put in a position as an entrepreneur, he would have pushed himself to work just as hard, always. He was always working. And I found that whenever he finished working in between his jobs, he was just dog tired. All he had to do was, all he could do was rest. He never really got to enjoy the kind of spoils of all of his hard work. And I think that we've inherited that, and we ultimately self-sabotage, where we feel like if we're not working hard enough, we don't deserve our success. The amount of business owners that I've seen, particularly our generation, that have got to the point where they've started their business, they've worked really hard to get it up and running, they've got some staff working for them, they're starting to transition into the kind of that manager and leader role, and then they go and do stuff that undoes all that hard work and puts themselves back in the kind of technician seat where they've worked so hard to get out of it. And I think it's subliminally we get in that position where we say, I'm not working hard enough, like I'm a bit of a fraud, because I don't think I don't deserve this. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we really need to work hard to break that cycle, because I think that'll be the undoing of our generation.
What do you think are some, practical things that people could do or change in the way they think that would help break this cycle?
I think that there's not enough time taken by everyone, not just our generation, to really define what we want in life. It's funny, last night, I'm a big YouTuber. I love watching YouTube. My evening ritual is after dinner, I'll sit there and kind of watch all of the different channels that I subscribe to on a daily basis. And I remember what first got me into YouTube is there was this YouTuber called Julian Smith. He's like a really, really funny guy. He used to do like skits on YouTube, and he was one of the original biggest YouTubers at the time. And then he just disappeared off the face of the earth. And he made a video last night after 2 years of just a hiatus from YouTube. And he was talking about a lot of this stuff, that he was one of the first guys to be super successful, and everyone viewed him through kind of these rose tinted glasses, that he'd made it. He'd achieved everything that he could possibly want. He's making money out of YouTube. He's independently wealthy. He's the master of his own destiny. But in his own mind, he was constantly in doubt of, well, if I've got all of this and I still don't feel fulfilled, what's wrong with me? So he decided to take a couple of years off, just switch off. And he was even saying through that entire time that he was constantly saying to himself, am I able to do this? I've got all these people that watch me and follow me. Am I doing the wrong thing by them? And it's interesting to get into the psyche of these types of people. And it's that constant voice in your head of self-sabotage, of what's enough. I think for most people, there's no such thing as enough, especially if you're an entrepreneur. But you need to break down your ultimate objective into measurable milestones. You need to see progress. Think about it, right? Let's put you in a position where you go to the gym, right? And you jump on the treadmill, right? I hate running. I hate it. But when you jump on the treadmill, you chuck it at time, right? You say, I'm going to run for 10 minutes, or I'm going to run for 20 minutes. Right? Shoot me now. But let's say you jumped on the treadmill and you didn't put a time on, or there was a button there, you pressed infinity. Right? There's just an infinite amount of time that you're running on this treadmill. You're going to get to a point and say, oh shit, when is this thing going to be over? Or you're going to jump off.
You can't hit that target.
No, you can't. It's impossible.
You've set yourself up to fail because you can't win.
Exactly. So for most people, that's life. They've jumped on a treadmill and they've pressed the infinite button, they've put it as high as it bloody goes, and they've just started running. So I'm going to give this a red hot crack, and they're setting themselves up for failure. So we need to understand that you've got to take I guess bite-sized chunks out of your goals, of your ultimate purpose in life. You need to reward yourself for your wins, and how you do that is you break it down. I'm a big believer in planning and making a plan, and I guess holding yourself accountable to measuring your progress against the plan. Because it was something that I was always taught, that the only difference between a dream and a goal is a plan. And worst case scenario is if you've got a plan and you've committed to it, you've broken it down into measurable steps, you might not get there to 100%, but at least you're heading in the right direction. It's better than just heading off into the abyss, which might ultimately lead you down a path that you don't want to go down just because you haven't planned. You're just taking it day by day. So you've got to do that. And I think it's also important that you recognize your successes and you learn from your mistakes. We're not perfect. We're humans after all, you know. So life has to be a constant learning experience. It was once said that there's no such thing as good situations or bad situations. It's a matter of perspective. So perspective is important as well.
Yeah, and I think this applies to all different areas of life. Do you know what I mean? You could apply it generally to your life altogether. You could, if you're a business owner, you could apply it to your business.
Yeah.
If you're trying to get ahead financially, you could apply it to your financial life. I think this is relevant everywhere.
Yeah, mate. It's funny that these types of conversations and thoughts have been happening for hundreds of years. Like I recently read a book called Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, who was a Roman emperor, basically the most well-known Roman emperor, probably the most successful, arguably. And at the peak of his reign, it's kind of the height of the Roman Empire, where he was essentially leading the Roman Empire across all of Europe. He was also a philosopher, and he found time to write his memoirs, which was put into this book called Meditations. And he was a strong believer in this philosophy called Stoicism, which was really about, I guess, that giving back and about having purpose in the world. And it's one of the things that today we tend to go through life as a surface encounter. Everything's a surface encounter. When was the last time you went on public transport and saw people just having a conversation? Like, everyone's buried in their phone, they've got earphones in, they're going by any means necessary not to communicate with the outside world, you know? And where's the purpose in that? I think that a lot of people have this dream of self-actualization, of giving back to society, of giving back to the community, but they don't live those values day to day. I've been guilty of doing it myself. Like, even walking down a hallway, the two people look the opposite way just so they don't have to make eye contact. So they don't have to say g'day. Yeah, it's crazy. It's just unbelievable that these surface encounters are really what's, I guess, the gap between us pursuing our purpose.
Very philosophical of you, mate.
Yes, mate. Took a page out of old Marcus's book.
So good.
Yeah, so look, I think, mate, let's talk about entrepreneurship for a moment. So we're obviously fresh in a new business.
Yeah, we're fresh. We're having a crack. Aureus Financial.
Mate,
back to the Roman Empire.
Your old man's a business owner, right?
Correct.
So what got him into business?
Mate, I think it was the old thing of wanting to be your own boss. You know what I mean? Being in charge of your own destiny. My parents had me when they were 15 when I was born, and he's been working from a very young age. I think he worked very hard for a long time in the smash repair industry as a spray painter, and he wanted to achieve more. Do you know what I mean? He knew he was working hard. He knew he could do good on his own. So he done the steps that it took to, rent a factory and start your own business. I think he went in partnership, and then that didn't work out. So he went on his own. But I think it's for most people, it's about being most entrepreneurs and business owners, I think it's about being in control of your day. And essentially, if you're in control of your day and your time, you're essentially in control of your entire life. Yeah.
Do you think that he's enjoyed his entrepreneurship journey?
I think he's had massive swings. So I think there's times where he's had big wins, and I think especially at the start when you go from being an employee to being a leader, I think your mindset changes, and you have a very steep learning curve very quickly. You have to change how you are as a person. And I think there's, over the years, he's been in business for a long time, 15 years or something like that, and I think he's had some massive highs, when business has done well and he's grown as a person and he's achieved things he never thought he would achieve. And then I think also in business there's massive lows, when things go wrong, or you need to let staff members go, or sometimes in business there's the money side of things, sometimes things get hard, GFC and things like that, where you need to think, what am I going to do here? So I think the spectrum of feelings that himself and other entrepreneurs would have felt over a 15-year period of being in business is massive.
It's a roller coaster.
It's a roller coaster. It's huge. And if you had to sum it up, I'd say, yeah, I think you would enjoy it. I think you're almost addicted to it. To the game, to the whole ride of it.
Yeah, it's interesting, mate. I found that when I initially took the leap into being self-employed, and my first business came as a result of necessity, really. I was working for NAB as an advisor, and they did a big restructure. They were one of the first banks to do it, where back in the day, the traditional bank advisor was sitting fat and happy, had a huge book of clients, sometimes in the thousands, which is just completely unrealistic for them to be able to service. They had a lot of clients that were paying fees and not getting any value, and they were making monstrous amounts of money.
Crooks.
They were, mate. And it was one of those things where the bank said, look, we need to be the first people to act on this. So they did a huge restructure, and they basically cut everyone's income. Some people lost 50% of their income overnight. So we're talking like high-end bank planners who were making $1 million a year, dropped their income to $500,000. Huge. For us, given that we were just getting started and we didn't really have big books of clients, we had very small client bases and we were just kind of getting started, we had a pretty significant cut. We're talking in the vicinity of probably 40 grand, right? And at the time, my old man was suffering from cancer, and he wasn't able to work. He didn't have the right insurance in place, and he was really suffering. So I felt the need that I had to try and subsidise my income from somewhere. So instead of the first thing coming to my mind of going out and starting my own advice business, I decided to start a fashion business.
You are very fashionable, man.
Thank you. Of all things, I'd never had any experience in fashion. I'd never really designed a thing in my life. I consider myself a pretty quick learner. But I decided that I was going to go launch my own men's fashion label, which was called Siete Clothing Co. And in the first instance, it was exciting. It was a really good learning experience. But I ultimately grew to hate it. And the reason why I hated it is because I wasn't passionate about the business. I didn't really care about fashion. It was like I always enjoyed fashion, but I hated the industry. I didn't enjoy working with the people. It was just a constant push to try and be successful and keep the thing afloat. It was just chasing money. It was a means to an end for me. It was a way for me to subsidise my income and be able to kind of help my family get through a difficult time. And although we had some success and we had, hit some really great milestones, there was no way that I could see myself continuing to do that for the rest of my life. I hated it. And I ultimately got to a point where I had to throw it in. And I basically got all my stock and I donated it all to charity and shut the business down. And I guess that was a big learning experience for me, that I understood that if you're going to be self-employed, you're going to be an entrepreneur, you're going to be a business owner, you need to be passionate about what you do.
You have to love it. It's the only way. It's the only way. Not only are you going to do well, but it's the only way you're going to get through hard times as well.
Exactly right. And I think that there was a really kind of profound lesson that I learned, that during the Obama presidency, he was interviewed. I don't know who he was interviewed by. And they said, Obama, you always wear the same suit every single day. You always wear a blue suit and a white shirt. Why is that? He kind of laughed, and being the suave guy that he is, and kind of collected his thoughts for a second, and he goes, look, I only have the capacity to make a certain number of strategic decisions a day, and I've got a lot of responsibility hanging over my head. So the last thing that I want to do when I get up in the morning is burn one of my decisions trying to think about what I'm going to wear to work that day. So I've eliminated that decision by making sure that I've only got blue suits and white shirts.
I love it.
So it was interesting that it kind of goes to show that you can't dilute your focus. I was an advisor by day, trying to help people make the right financial decisions and guide them through to achieving financial freedom. And then either before work or after work or on my lunch break, I'm trying to run a fashion business.
Two different things.
It's yin and yang, mate.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't sustainable. I was burning the candle at both ends. So I think that entrepreneurship has to be about congruency. You've got to be congruent with yourself. It's just kind of interesting that there's a lot of people out there that are just pursuing money, they're pursuing cash, and there's no fulfillment.
That can never end well.
No, it can't. You burn yourself out, you self-sabotage, you probably end up doing more harm than good.
Man, I think on that point, I think a lot of people, I think they miss the point with money, you know. People have this huge emotional attachment to money, and they miss it for what it really is. Money truly, it's an inanimate object. It can't do anything. It can't do any good. It can't do any bad. It's like a hammer or a screwdriver. You have to pick it up and you have to do something with it in order for it to have any use, right? Otherwise, it's just a piece of plastic. It's just a piece of paper. It's nothing. So people, when they get confused and they get this emotional attachment to money, and they start chasing it, and they start makes them feel happy, or it makes them feel sad. It's not supposed to do any of that.
No.
When was the last time you walked into your shed, you looked at your hammer and you were really happy about your hammer, or you got really sad that your screwdriver looked the way it did? You don't care. You don't care about tools, and that's what money is. Money's a tool. So I think when people start to look at money for what it really is, that it's a tool that you can use to achieve other things in life, doesn't matter whatever those other goals are, then you have a better understanding of it, you're less emotional about it, and you can actually achieve more of it and gather more of it, really.
You know, it's that light at the end of the tunnel. It's a vehicle, right? Whenever you get into a vehicle, right, you have to know where you're going first, right? You have to define the destination.
That's right.
And then you need to find the right vehicle that's going to get you there safely. So it's like if you're going to go out into the bush, right? You're going to try and drive to Ayers Rock. You're not going to do it in a 1982 Celica, right? It's probably not going to end well. It's not equipped to go off road, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure you do it, but it's not going to be very comfortable. So it's about defining the right vehicle that's going to give you certainty about achieving your destination. And I think that the blind pursuit of money and wealth is very misguided. More often than not, when I speak to clients that come in to talk to us, they're confronted when I ask them about what they want. Okay, well, I want to be wealthy. And, okay, well, why? When they actually take the time to think about it, and normally there's a big pause, followed by, oh shit, I haven't really thought about it. And it's just because we're so busy, it's ultimately stopped us from taking that step back from our current reality and redefining what it is that drives us. We've done this recently, mate. I guess we got to a point where we got pretty caught up in our day-to-day. And we took a step back and decided that the path that we were going down wasn't the right one.
Yeah, it's not for us.
So I guess we're on a very interesting journey ourselves, down a new path.
Yeah, it is going to be very interesting. It's all exciting. A lot of firsts, like even today, our first podcast. A lot of things that This was actually hard to set up. This was actually we didn't know what we were doing.
It's lighting. Who thought lighting would be so difficult?
Lighting. What even is that?
Yeah.
What's lighting? But a lot of firsts, and it's really exciting. It's a really exciting time. You wake up every day. You don't know what's in store for you on the day. You get this big to-do list, and you're figuring it all out as you go. I'm looking forward to 2018. Actually.
Mate, here's a question for you. So let's fast forward. Let's say we're doing a podcast the 20th of December 2018.
Yeah.
What do you want to have achieved over the next 12 months when we're having that conversation, reflecting back?
Oh, mate. Personally or professionally or both?
Let's talk about both.
Let's talk about both. Well, my wife's pregnant. So we're going to have a little girl.
Congratulations.
Right, thank you very much. So that's probably the most important thing in my life.
Definitely.
My wife and I will be moving home next year, so that's exciting. And I guess the third big thing at the moment is obviously the business, and I'd like to see some success in the business. I want to hit the targets that we've set for ourselves. I want the business to grow into what we're nurturing it to be.
Sure.
This vehicle that helps people get ahead. And yeah, in a year's time, looking back on podcast number 20 or whatever it's going to be,
yeah.
I'd like to have the nice place and a happy and healthy little daughter, and to have a look back and say, what, we've done good in this business. We tried our best, and it's working. So what do you want on podcast number 20?
Mate, I as you know, I talk about goals all day every day, so I try and spend a lot of time defining what it is that I want. I think at a business level, I want us to be positioned as the catalyst for change in this industry. I think we're onto a very good thing. With the book coming out in January, with our first course coming out to kind of teach people the basics of money, with the wealth coaching offering that we're crafting, the Wealth Hub offering for the kind of time poor business owners. I think that we've got a fantastic offering to help people really make meaningful change in their lives. So I really want to work hard to get that in front of as many people as possible. And the thing that annoys me the most about our industry is that currently there's only about 15% of the Australian population that actively seeks advice. And I expect that a lot of those only engage in a transactional relationship. They've got an advisor at their local bank that's sorting out their super, that's managing a bit of money for them, set them up with some insurance. That's not what wealth is about. It's a factor of wealth, but that's not the big picture.
No.
And I think that people they don't know what they don't know. People really need to be taught that language of money, as we kind of spoke about today, and they need to be empowered to pursue what it is that drives them. So I really want to position ourselves as being in a position to do that, get ourselves out there in front of as many people as we possibly can.
Mate, and I think we need to do it. You mentioned the 15% of people that actively seek advice, and on any given survey, when people ask about if they're happy with their financial situation, you get 70, 80, 90% of people say they're not.
Correct.
And it's such a conundrum that there's so many people that aren't happy financially, but they do nothing to improve it, and I don't know if that's because of they don't know that there's things out there to help them improve it, or if it's I don't know what the reason is.
There's two things, mate. I think that it's a lack of education, so people aren't certain about their ability to make the right decision, so they sit on the fence, and they really lack the accountability to take action. So it's like, for example, like the best athletes have a coach. You think about it, how many athletes have you heard of that, besides probably Nick Kyrgios, right? He doesn't have a coach, he's too good. He runs from one side of the fence to the other, hitting the same ball. But most other athletes have a coach. They've got somebody that's standing behind them and making them do that one last rep, that one last lap, the one last whatever it is, to push themselves to that next level. Because I guess, back on one of your previous points, as an entrepreneur, it's a lonely journey. We're the master of our own destiny. A business will never outgrow its leader. So if that's the case, then how can the leader ensure that they constantly grow and thrive? One of my mentors once told me that as an entrepreneur, as an individual, we're like a tree. You're either growing and thriving, or you're rotting and dying. You've got to choose one.
I agree with that.
And in a lot of cases, once we get to a certain level of success, we're so fearful of losing it that we put ourselves in a position where we're just trying to nurture what it is that we've created. So therefore, you're not growing and thriving anymore. So look, it's an interesting point. I want to share these kind of these thoughts and I guess challenge people's way of thinking so they get out of their box, try and break the habits that they've kind of hardwired over generations, and start thinking about what is there more to life. Interesting point, huh?
Yeah, very interesting, mate. I think I was just thinking that there's so much cooped up in our brains that we're trying to get out there.
Got to get it out there,
mate. We've got to do these podcasts. We've got to do them often.
Correct.
You know, we're going to get some guests on board, some really interesting people, some really special people that are going to talk about other cool stuff. But I think you and I should do this often, just on our own.
Well, yeah, mate. I think that it's a growth experience for everyone. I think that thought leadership and getting our ideas out there into the world is important because it helps advance humankind. Like I don't have a big enough ego to think that alone I'm going to change the world, right? But I'm confident enough to think that I can help people mould their perspective and get a fresh perspective on the world so they can go out and change the world. And I think that it's important that there's people out there that provoke thought. Because I think far too often we get boxed into the way that we see the world. It's important that we have a fresh perspective. And fresh perspective keeps things interesting. It keeps us continuing to evolve. It inspires people to innovate and change.
Yeah, well, I think as a person, you should always continue growing. You should continue educating yourself. You know, it's like you look back on yourself 12 months ago or 10 years ago and you think, how much have I grown? And the problem is the curve's like this, right? So you grow a lot when you're a kid, and then you start to level off. But I think that you could continue that learning, that growing aspect. That's how you get these guys that are 50, 60, 70, 80 years old, 90 years old, and they're just these phenomenal humans that have just done monstrous things with their lives. Because they've continued growing long past what the average person continues growing. I think that's an important point. It ties in with the tree and the growing and the dying.
Yeah. So look, I think that there's some interesting things that we've got on the agenda to talk about, mate. And I think that it's hopefully going to be interesting for those who are tuning in and listening to us banter along.
I don't mind this. This isn't bad.
It's a bit of fun, mate.
Bit of banter.
So look, I think overall exciting journey.
Yep.
It's been a good end to 2017. There's been some ups and downs, but I think that I'm happy with what we've achieved.
It's been an interesting year.
Mate, we've set ourselves on the path for what we want in life. So ultimately it comes back to us to be the master of our own destinies. So 2018 is going to be very exciting.
All right, done. Let's
get
the journey into it. All right,
mate.
Excellent.
Awesome.